For months, the Council believed humanity's smiles, calm tones, and diplomacy were masks of weakness, but when Ambassador Harper finally turned off polite mode, the galaxy discovered that the most dangerous weapon humans possess is not their rage, it's their control. The day it happened, the Council chamber felt different. Even before the arguments began, even before the vote was tallied, there was a tension in the air that none of the environmental systems could filter away. The chamber, normally a hive of chatter, had fallen quiet, its vast dome echoing with the stillness of anticipation. 17 species sat at their appointed stations, eyes, 2, 3, 6, or more, trained on the human ambassador who stood at the center of it all. Ambassador Penelope Harper of Earth looked every bit the professional diplomat. Her uniform was immaculate, her posture balanced, her smile practiced to perfection. And yet, beneath that calm veneer, even the most untrained could sense something else, something coiled tight. Vex Tora, veteran ambassador of the Council, felt it immediately. His scaled neck prickled with unease, the instinctive warning of a creature who had lived long enough to recognize predators. The Council proceedings had been dragging for months, 8 long months of debate, of presentations, of reports, of meetings that often lasted until the moons rose over the station's artificial horizon. Humanity's petition was simple in principle: full membership in the Galactic Council. By now, they had already proven themselves, hadn't they? They had shared quantum communication technology that now linked half the Orion arm. They had deployed fleets to hold back the Void Swarm, an existential threat that had overwhelmed the combined defenses of several Council races. They had offered terraforming advances that saved barren colonies from collapse. By every measure of contribution, they had earned their place. But contribution was not the same as acceptance. "Ambassador Harper," Council leader Zar Quinn began, his shimmering skin refracting light in nervous ripples. "After thorough review, the Council has determined that humanity is not yet ready for full membership." A murmur ran through the chamber, quickly silenced by the weight of his 6 unblinking eyes. "Not ready?" Harper's tone was still calm, but her smile faltered ever so slightly at the edges. "After 8 months of cooperation? After defending colonies that were not ours? After opening technologies no one else dared share?" Zar Quinn's forearms folded in a gesture meant to convey patience. "We appreciate humanity's contributions, truly we do. But our cultural observers report troubling inconsistencies. Your people are volatile, polite one moment, alarmingly aggressive the next. It is not conducive to transparent diplomacy." Another delegate, Plint Tuck of Callisto Prime, bobbed forward in his gelatinous seat. 3 solar cycles ago, one of your trade representatives was observed excusing himself from negotiations, entering another room and striking a wall so hard he broke bones in his own hand. Then he returned smiling as if nothing had happened. "That's just Marcus," Harper said lightly, though her eyes betrayed no humor. "He has anger management issues." But Krill Vox, insectoid representative of Vexor, leaned in, antenna trembling. "It is not just Marcus. Our psychological profiles suggest that all humans possess this duality. You bottle your emotions, you mask them, and when the mask slips—" Vex Tora caught it then, the subtle tightening of Harper's grip on her datapad, the shallow change in her breathing. To others, it might have gone unnoticed, but his species had evolved to recognize the moment before a predator struck. His 3 hearts quickened, dread wispy, ring in his mind. The verdict was delivered without ceremony. 37 votes in favor of delay, 5 against. 50 years before humanity could reapply. 50 years to develop emotional regulation. 50 years, Harper repeated softly, placing her datapad down with exquisite care. "A blink in cosmic terms," Zar Quinn said magnanimously. "Use this time wisely." The chamber turned its focus to the next agenda item, as if the matter were settled. But Vex Tora could not take his eyes off the human ambassador. Her pupils had dilated. Her breathing was too steady, too deliberate. The warning signs were clear. Something was about to happen. And for the first time in his long diplomatic career, Vex Tora was afraid. Not of war, not of politics, but of what would happen when a human decided to stop being polite. The chamber should have moved on. That was the way of council business. Each agenda item weighed, voted, recorded, and forgotten as the next was raised. But Ambassador Harper didn't sit back down. She remained standing, her uniform crisp, her datapad untouched on the table before her. The stillness of her figure pulled at every gaze in the chamber like gravity. "No," she said. The word was quiet, yet it sliced through the air sharper than any plasma blade. Zar Quinn froze mid-motion, his forearms halting in a practiced gesture of authority. "I beg your pardon." "I said no," Harper repeated, her voice calm but resonant. "We are not moving on. We are going to revisit this decision. Now." A ripple of alarm spread across the chamber. Protocol dictated that after a vote, no further discussion could be held until a new petition was filed. Defying that order was unthinkable. And yet, Harper stood unshaken, her posture precise, her voice unflinching. Zar Quinn attempted to reassert control. "Ambassador Harper, this reaction demonstrates precisely the emotional volatility we are concerned about." Harper's smile widened, but this time there was no warmth in it. It was the kind of smile Vex Tora had seen once before, on a predator baring its teeth. "Oh, Council Leader," she said softly. "Believe me when I say, I am being extremely polite right now. What you are seeing is still very much humanity's diplomatic face." The words sent a chill through Vex Tora's exosuit. He shifted in his seat, unease swelling into something sharper. His instincts screamed at him, "This is not bluster, this is warning." But Zar Quinn pressed on, blind to the danger. "Then we appreciate your restraint, Ambassador, but the matter is closed. We will revisit in 50 years. Harper tilted her head as though studying a child who had said something foolish. 50 years, she repeated slowly. "Do you know what you've missed, Council Leader? Do you know what your cultural observers failed to understand about us?" The chamber hushed. Even the environmental systems seemed to quiet, as though the air itself leaned in. "We don't hide our anger because we are deceptive," Harper said. "We hide it because we are trying to be kind to you." The silence that followed was suffocating. Vex Tora felt his secondary heart stutter in disbelief. The other delegates shifted uneasily, their features betraying confusion, alarm, even fear. "Polite mode," Harper continued, pacing slowly now, datapad in hand. "That's what we call it. Polite mode. You've seen us smile while being insulted, laugh off sabotage, endure betrayal with patience. You thought it was weakness." Her voice hardened. "It was never weakness. It was mercy." She tapped her datapad. The vast screen above the chamber came alive. Footage flickered, images of humanity not in the council chamber, not in diplomatic meetings, but in their rawest forms. Crowds rioting in the streets, soldiers in trenches, athletes screaming in victory, families in heated debate, armies marching under banners of defiance. "This," Harper said, gesturing to the images, "is humanity when we are not polite. We built civilizations, toppled empires, split atoms, and reached the stars while carrying emotions that would shatter most of your minds. We chose politeness not because we lack control, but because without it, you would never have been able to stand in the same room as us." Vex Tora's scaled neck flushed cold. He glanced at Zar Quinn, hoping, praying, that the council leader understood. But Zar Quinn's iridescent skin was pulsing with indignation, not comprehension. "This display," he declared, his voice booming with amplified authority, "is unnecessary." Harper's eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made Vex Tora's stomach clench. She leaned slightly forward, every line of her body radiating a new, terrifying certainty. "Oh, I think it's very necessary," she said, her tone almost gentle. "Because in about 5 minutes—" She snapped her fingers, the sound cracking like a whip through the chamber. "I'm going to stop being polite myself, and then we're going to have a very different kind of conversation about humanity's place in this council." The words hung heavy, electric, alive with menace. For the first time in his 7 centuries of diplomacy, Vex Tora realized he was watching history pivot in real time, and he had no doubt that when Ambassador Harper finally switched off polite mode, nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. The chamber vibrated with unease. Delegates whispered in tones their translators struggled to keep up with, their voices layering into a static buzz. Personal comfort fields flickered on as several species adjusted their atmospheric bubbles to cope with the rising tension. The air was thick with fear, confusion, and something Vex Tora had not felt in centuries: anticipation. Ambassador Harper's transformation was not sudden, but deliberate. Vex Tora could see it happening in increments, the slight relaxation of her posture, the way her measured tone sharpened into clarity, the controlled intensity behind her movements. The careful diplomat mask was dissolving, and something far older, far more primal, was emerging beneath it. "Let's review," Harper began, her voice calm but cutting. "You've denied our application for membership. You've dismissed our contributions, quantum communication technology, military defense, terraforming expertise, as irrelevant, and you've told us to wait 50 years because we smile when we're angry." Her gaze swept across the chamber. Alien eyes of every shape and number met hers, only to look away. "You think our restraint is dangerous because you don't understand it, so let me be brutally honest." She set her datapad aside, folding her hands on the podium. "When humans turn off polite mode, violence isn't our first response. Honesty is." She gestured to the massive screen behind her, shifting the projection. Data filled the air, trade agreements, technological exchanges, timelines meticulously cross-referenced. Every time humanity has shared a major breakthrough with the Council, within months a new excuse has been raised to delay our full acceptance. 6 times in the last 3 years. A fascinating pattern. The insectoid delegate Krill Vox twitched her antennae, a visible sign of distress. "That is not—" "Yes, it is," Harper cut her off. "The real reason behind your decision isn't emotional transparency, it's fear. You are terrified of what it means if humanity takes its rightful place in this chamber. You fear our technology, you fear our independence, and most of all, you fear that we will not play by the rules you've written to keep yourselves comfortable." Zarquin's skin flickered violently, shifting from indignant blue to furious purple. "These accusations are outrageous. You dare." "I dare," Harper said simply. Her voice did not rise, but the force behind it made the chamber quake. "I dare because you've left me no choice." She stepped away from the podium, deliberately crossing the invisible line of the chamber's security field. Warning tones rang out as guards shifted, hands hovering near their weapons. Harper smiled at them, not her diplomatic smile, but something sharper, more dangerous. "Don't worry, I'm not here to attack anyone. That's not how this works." Her movements were fluid now, confident. She paced slowly, every step punctuating her words. "Do you know what happens when humans stop being polite? We stop holding back. We stop softening truths to spare your pride. We say what needs to be said. We act as the situation demands. And we do it with precision." She snapped her fingers again, and new images filled the chamber. Footage of human armies standing firm against impossible odds, disaster response teams saving millions, engineers building cities from rubble. "This is who we are without the filter. Builders, fighters, survivors. You mistake that control for instability, when in truth it is the foundation of everything we've achieved." The silence was deafening. Even Zar Quinn hesitated, his many eyes darting as if seeking escape. "Here is what comes next," Harper continued, her tone now deadly calm. "I will leave this chamber today. I will contact Earth, and I will recommend that we suspend sharing quantum communication systems. I will propose that we review every military defense agreement, and I will suggest that instead of waiting on your approval, we negotiate directly with those species who value results over fear." The chamber erupted, delegates leaping to their feet, shouting over one another, translators breaking under the strain. The panic was immediate, undeniable. Harper raised her hand. The noise died instantly. "That," she said softly, "was just a preview of what happens when one human turns off polite mode." She let her words linger, her eyes narrowing as she studied the chamber of trembling delegates. "Now, imagine what happens if all of us do it at once." Vex Tora's 3 hearts thundered as the realization settled over him like a crushing weight. This was not rage, it was not loss of control, it was a demonstration, and it was calculated to perfection. The chamber had never known such noise. It was chaos, raw and unfiltered. Delegates who had once spoken with ritualized patience were suddenly shrieking across the floor, translators sputtering as they tried to keep pace. Comfort fields flickered, temperature regulators strained, and even the gravity anchors trembled as counselors of every shape and size abandoned dignity in favor of panic. And through it all, Ambassador Harper stood perfectly still. She did not raise her voice. She did not demand silence. She simply waited. It took less than a minute. The chamber's outrage consumed itself, voices cracking under their own desperation. One by one, delegates grew quiet, not out of respect, but out of fear. By the time Harper finally spoke, her words carried into silence so deep that even the hum of the station's life support sounded thunderous. "Your reactions tell me everything I need to know," she said evenly. "You're not angry at my words. You're terrified of what they mean." She lifted her datapad, scrolling through a prepared file with clinical precision. "Effective immediately, Earth will suspend all pending transfers of quantum communication relays. Any colony still waiting for its node will continue to wait until further notice." Gasps erupted. The quantum relay network was the nervous system of the Council, faster and more reliable than anything they had known before. Half the species present were dependent on it, for trade and security. Harper's tone sharpened. "Military support contracts will be reviewed. Our fleets will return home. Should the Void Swarm come again, you will meet it with your own strength." Several representatives leapt to their feet, shouting protests. The insectoid Krill Vox's antennae thrashed wildly as she cried, "Without your fleets, the swarm will devour half the arm." "Then perhaps you should have considered that before voting against the very species that saved you," Harper replied coldly. The words struck like a blade. Vox slumped back, her limbs curling defensively. Harper continued, voice steady, deliberate. "Humanity will pursue bilateral agreements instead of council-wide treaties. Any species willing to treat us as equals will receive our full cooperation. Those who are not, will not." Zar Quinn's shimmering skin pulsed an erratic purple. "This is coercion. This is proof of your instability." Harper turned her gaze on him, and for the first time since the session began, her voice carried steel. "Instability?" She leaned forward slightly, each syllable precise. "We held this council together during the swarm's onslaught while you debated. We kept your colonies alive while you stalled. We smiled, we nodded, we endured insult after insult, because we believed patience was the path to unity." Her voice lowered to a whisper, yet carried to every corner of the chamber. "And you called it weakness." Vex Tora felt it in his bones, the weight of that truth pressing down like the pull of a black hole. It was undeniable, inescapable. The chamber erupted again, not in argument this time, but in panic. Delegates whispered frantically to aides, sending urgent messages to their governments. Some species immediately began calculating the cost of losing human alliances. Others tried to devise desperate compromises. For the first time in living memory, the Council looked less like the galaxy's seat of power, and more like a nest of frightened hatchlings. Harper let the spectacle unfold. She allowed them to feel the abyss yawning at their feet. Then, when the terror was ripe, she spoke again. "This is not a tantrum. This is not anger. This is strategy. Humanity has always played by your rules, but we don't have to. The question now is simple. Will you adapt, or will you cling to the illusion of control until it destroys you?" The silence that followed was total. No one dared breathe too loudly. Vex Tora knew then what so many of his colleagues had failed to grasp. The humans were not unstable. They were not dangerous because they lacked control. They were dangerous because their control was absolute, and when they chose to withdraw it, the galaxy trembled. And in that moment, with every eye in the chamber fixed on her, Ambassador Harper smiled again. Not the polite, diplomatic smile they had grown used to. This one was different, honest, unapologetic. It was the smile of a predator who had finally stopped pretending. The chamber was still trembling when Harper left. She didn't storm out, didn't slam the doors, didn't so much as glance back. She simply gathered her datapad, smoothed the sleeve of her uniform, and walked away with a composure that burned itself into memory. When the doors sealed behind her, the silence that followed was unbearable. For several long seconds, no one moved. Delegates shifted uneasily, but no one dared speak. Vex Tora could hear his own breathing within his translator bubble, shallow and unsteady. His 3 hearts pounded with the memory of her words. She had not shouted, had not raged, and yet her calm precision had carried more weight than any declaration of war he had ever heard. Finally, Zar Quinn broke the silence. His shimmering skin flickered in erratic hues, betraying the storm he tried to mask. "This is intolerable. We cannot allow a single ambassador to dictate terms to the entire council. His voice, usually commanding, sounded hollow. Krill Vox, antennae trembling, clicked sharply. Dictate. No, council leader. She didn't dictate. She demonstrated. There's a difference. Other voices followed, hesitant, wary. She said they would suspend quantum relays, muttered Yelith Prime, her eye stalks quivering. Do you have any idea what that means for trade routes, for defense networks? Our colonies depend on those relays, another hissed. If they shut us out, panic spread like cracks through glass. Delegates who had dismissed Harper hours ago now scrambled, each calculating their own survival. For the first time, Vex Tora saw the council as it truly was, not a united body of governance, but a cluster of fragile alliances balanced on fear. He cleared his throat, a subtle rasp amplified by his translator. Colleagues, you are missing the point. Dozens of eyes, compound, singular, multifaceted, turned toward him. He felt the weight of their desperation. Humanity did not lose control today, Vex Tora said slowly. They displayed it. Every word, every gesture, every silence was chosen. That was not instability. That was restraint, deliberately removed. We have misjudged them. Zar Quinn bristled. You sound as though you admire them. I fear them, Vex Tora corrected. But I respect them, and if we are wise, we will do both. A hush followed. The truth hung heavy, undeniable. The insectoid Krill Vox clicked again, this time in reluctant agreement. They fought the void swarm while we hesitated. They shared technology while we squabbled. Perhaps their greatest danger is not their temper, but their ability to endure insult after insult without snapping sooner. One by one, the delegates voiced their realizations, some in shame, others in pragmatism. The calculus shifted rapidly. If they withdraw their fleets, the border colonies will fall. If they suspend technology, half our communication lines collapse. If the emergency session convened less than a cycle after Harper's departure, rarely had the council moved with such speed. Messages had flown across half the Orion arm, some panicked, some pleading, some quietly pragmatic. Entire economies teetered at the thought of losing human quantum relays. Defense ministers sent warnings that without human fleets, border systems would become exposed within months. The conclusion was inescapable. Humanity was not a junior partner begging for a seat. Humanity had become the axis around which the galaxy now spun. When Harper returned, the chamber was different. The banners of pomp and ceremony had been removed. The dais was lowered. The security fields were scaled back. Even the lighting had been adjusted. Bright white lamps replaced with warmer tones, simulating the color of Earth's sun. The change was subtle, but unmistakable. The council had decided for once to speak on human terms. Ambassador Harper entered without flourish. Her expression was neutral, her steps unhurried. She set her datapad on the table, folded her hands, and waited. Council leader Zar Quinn opened the session, but his voice carried none of the authority it once had. Ambassador Harper, we may have misjudged the nature of your people. Our decision yesterday was hasty. Harper arched a brow. Hasty? That's an interesting word for a process that dragged on for 8 months. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Zar Quinn's iridescent skin flickered with shame. We failed to appreciate the discipline behind your restraint. We saw volatility where we should have seen control. For the first time in cycles, Harper leaned back, her gaze narrowing. So you've realized humans aren't dangerous because we lose control. We're dangerous because we choose when to exercise it. A hush fell. It was one thing to suspect, it was another to hear it said aloud. Yes, admitted Krill Vox, antennae dipping in concession. Your demonstration yesterday made that painfully clear. Gasps echoed. Reform of the council's ancient structures was unthinkable, and yet no one dared dismiss it. Second, Harper continued, we will not wait 50 years for reapplication. Either we are admitted now, or we walk away entirely. Zar Quinn's skin rippled in alarm. You would abandon the council? Harper's eyes were ice. We already warned you. We're done being polite. Humanity doesn't need this council to thrive, but this council will not survive without humanity. Silence pressed down like gravity. Delegates shifted, their unease visible. Some wanted to protest, but the evidence of their dependency was undeniable. Finally, Vex Torah spoke, his rasp low but steady. Then perhaps what we need is not just another member, but a mirror. Humanity has shown us what our own politeness has become, ritual without honesty. If admitting you means confronting truths we have ignored, then so be it. Harper studied him for a long moment, then inclined her head. At last, someone who understands. The vote that followed was unprecedented. Not only was humanity admitted as a full member of the Council, but a new provision was passed, one granting them authority as an order to species, empowered to call out hypocrisy, obstruction, or corruption without censure. The irony was not lost on anyone. The very trait once deemed a liability was now in the chamber was quieter than Vex Torah had ever known it. Not the artificial quiet of protocol or the brittle hush of ceremony, but something deeper, an awareness that every word spoken from that point forward would echo across centuries. The vote had been cast. Humanity was no longer an outsider, no longer a petitioner begging for a place. They were a full member of the Council, more than that, an order to species, entrusted with the power to challenge where others would defer. The decision had been unanimous, though not out of consent. Us. It was unanimous because no one had dared vote otherwise. When the results flashed across the chamber, Harper did not smile. She did not revel in triumph or offer a victory speech. She merely inclined her head, as though accepting a responsibility she had always expected to bear. Tsar Quinn, his skin flickering faint hues of resignation, leaned forward. Ambassador Harper, humanity has won what it sought. But I must ask, why? Why turn off your so-called polite mode? Why risk destabilizing everything when patience might have won you this seat in time? Harper regarded him for a long moment, then spoke softly. Because patience without respect is exploitation. We tolerated your delays, your insults, your evasions, because we believed patience was the bridge to understanding. But bridges can only bear so much weight. When you destroyed them with arrogance, we had to show you what lay beneath. Her gaze swept across the chamber. We didn't lose control in that moment. We chose honesty, and sometimes honesty is far more dangerous than anger. The words settled over the assembly like a storm cloud. Delegates shifted uneasily, but none spoke against her. Krill Vox finally broke the silence, antennae bowing low. Perhaps we, too, have been guilty of our own version of polite mode. Centuries of ceremony, ritual, and pretense, covering truths we feared to face. Perhaps it took humanity to remind us that restraint can conceal cowardice as easily as it conceals strength. A murmur of reluctant agreement followed. The Council, for all its pride, had been unmasked by the very species they had dismissed as immature. Vex Torah studied Harper with something close to awe. She had come into this chamber as an ambassador seeking entry, but she would leave as something more, an arbiter, a catalyst. Humanity had not simply won a seat. They had redefined what the Council could be. As the session adjourned, Harper gathered her datapad, but paused at the threshold. She turned back once more, her voice calm, her words measured. Understand this, humanity didn't come here to dominate you. We didn't come here to demand tribute or obedience. We came here because cooperation matters, but cooperation must be built on respect. We will be patient, yes. We will be polite, often, but never mistake those things for weakness again, because when our patience ends, it will not return, and none of us, human or alien, will like what follows. With that, she left. Vex Torah remained seated long after the chamber emptied, his thoughts heavy. He had lived through 7 centuries of council politics, witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the forging of treaties, the collapse of coalitions. Yet never had he felt the weight of history so acutely. Humanity's lesson was not one of power alone. It was a reminder that patience is meaningful only when it is reciprocated, that politeness is valuable only when it serves truth, and it was a warning that the galaxy's survival would depend not on suppressing its fiercest voices, but on learning when to listen to them. He would ensure this lesson was remembered, because he knew with a clarity that chilled him that if it were ever forgotten, the next time humanity turned off polite mode, the galaxy itself might not survive.